So in this, let's take a moment. I want to talk about the different processes of evolution, because understanding the differences between phyletic gradualism and punctuated equilibrium are really vital to understanding how evolution works and the misconceptions that are out there in the public. So when we look at evolution, we can look in two different ways. We can either look at microevolution or we can look at macroevolution. Microevolution is going to be looking at the small details, like DNA. Macroevolution is going to be looking at large-scale things, like speciation. That whole, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So what we're really going to see here is that phyletic gradualism and punctuated equilibrium are the same thing, just two different ways of looking at it. Microevolution highlights phyletic gradualism, whereas macroevolution highlights punctuated equilibrium. So let's take a look here at this figure. This figure demonstrates precisely what I'm talking about. So let's talk about what we see in the fossil record. And what we see in the fossil record is the picture down here. Here we have horse evolution. Okay, horse evolution is actually really fascinating, and we're going to get into it just a little bit in chapter 16. So what we see in the fossil record, and this tends to be what leads to misconceptions in the public, is where we see one fossil where it starts to come in, it exists for a time, and then it goes extinct. And then all of a sudden we see a brand new fossil, and it lives for a while, and it goes extinct. And then we see a brand new species, and it lives for a while, and it goes extinct. So we see these distinct jumps, where it looks like we have a long time here where there's no change, and then very quickly there's a whole bunch of change. This is where people always start wondering, well, where is the missing link, right? There has to be something here in between, some shade of gray, right? And this is what leads to the not understanding. So what we're seeing here with punctuated equilibrium is macro evolution. Now, let's see what's really going on, which is what's up top. And this is gradualism. Remember, the fossil record is biased, right? It's not going to preserve everything, nor is it going to preserve soft tissues. So there's a lot going on in here in these long periods that we can't see because we don't have those soft tissues. So if you look at gradualism, what's actually happening is this animal isn't staying steady, it's slowly accumulating changes. And that leads to a new organism. And that organism slowly accumulating changes. So what we actually have here is this organism is the same as this one, is the same as this one, is the same as this one. They're all the same. They're just changing along the way. And this brings to light a really interesting conversation, which is what makes a species. Because when you have what are called speciation events, which in the fossil record they're very clear, they're right here, here's one species, here's the second. When you look at what's actually going on, these gradual accumulations of DNA changes, you realize that from one organism to another, they're just shades of gray. Right? There's really no defining moment where you go from one species to another. And what's interesting with phyletic gradualism is we see this in viruses. Viruses and fruit flies show us that gradualism is exactly what happened. We've actually watched this DNA, right, these organisms evolve, gradually accumulate these changes to where when you add it up, it looks like a brand new organism. So this is a really interesting topic when you think about it, right? Because what we have here are two different views of evolution. The macro sense, because the fossil record doesn't give us a complete record, and then the micro sense, which is the complete record. So hopefully that kind of clears up these different views of evolution. Hopefully it's starting to bring to light to you a whole bunch of questions that you might have, because this is actually a really, really fascinating topic.